Hi everybody, I'm Steve Dunn. When I was in school, if I needed information for an assignment, I had to use this, an encyclopedia. Not anymore. Now I use this. Hey Siri.
Hi there.
AI is everywhere. It can be really helpful. Now my KATU colleague, Sammy Holm, and we're going to do a little experiment here. Because the NBA playoffs are in full swing right now, we thought we'd ask a question. Who won the 1961 NBA championship? Sammy, this is your research tool, the encyclopedia. This is mine. Siri, let's find out who can get it fastest. Siri, who won the 1961 NBA championship?
The Boston Celtics won the 1961 NBA championship.
Obviously not even a contest. We know AI can be useful in everyday life, but what about its use in elementary, middle, and high school? With the growing popularity of AI like ChatGPT, there's a belief this technology will change education. So what are the benefits and the drawbacks of this type of AI in the classroom? That's the topic of this town hall tonight. AI in schools, risk and reward. Sammy, you still looking?
Still looking.
This town hall starts right now.
From KATU News, this is a KATU Town Hall. AI in schools, risk and reward.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to this KATU Town Hall. I'm Steve Dunn. And by the way, it took Sammy a little more than 7 minutes to locate the answer in that encyclopedia. It would have taken me a lot longer than that, Sammy, so thanks for taking part. Seeing we're talking about AI in schools, how about a little AI 101? Some other uses include navigation apps, social media, digital assistants like Alexa and Siri, facial recognition, and automated customer service, just to name a few. Tonight, we are focusing on AI's application in schools. What are the risks and the rewards? Depends really on who you ask. We have invited teachers, school board members, parents, students, and AI experts to weigh in on the pros and cons of AI in schools. They're from 6 different school districts in Portland Metro and Southwest Washington, and 2 private schools as well. Now, Sammy, who had so much fun with the encyclopedia, is joining me to help with a microphone tonight. Before we get started, I have 3 questions, and please raise your hand to the one that most represents your opinion of AI. How many of you think AI just overall is a good thing? Overall a good thing. How many think it's a bad thing? How many think it's good and bad? Well, see, there we go. I knew that was going to happen. Now, for our viewers at home, we want to know your thoughts on the use of artificial intelligence in schools. In fact, we're asking, how should AI be used in schools? Do you think it should be banned? Should be allowed for teachers only? Students should be allowed to use it? Students should be taught how to use it properly. You can weigh in by taking a picture of the QR code you see right there on your screen, or you can find this poll with this story on our website, KATU.com. We're going to check back in throughout this program tonight. Our studio guests are very familiar with AI, but for some of us, there's a bit of a learning curve. We hear a lot about AI chatbots like ChatGPT. Lindsay Washburn is here. She has an extensive background in AI, worked on the Tiger-Tualatin School District AI guidelines. I'm going to come over here to Lindsay. Tell us about, because there's a lot of folks at home don't know what ChatGPT is, and I really didn't until I did some investigating of my own. Why is it so important? Why are people using it so much?
Yeah, I think, so to start with, ChatGPT is part of generative AI. It's a large language model. It's predicting text. And I think it's helpful to understand that AI has actually been around for a long time. As a field of study, it was first coined in the 1950s. And it feels like it's here all of a sudden out of nowhere, specifically because of ChatGPT. So in November 2022, ChatGPT was basically unleashed to the world for free. And that's really what has gotten us here today. So it's helpful to remember that AI is a huge field of study, deep learning, machine learning, that we've been working on for decades. But now here we are with generative AI and ChatGPT, which is that large language model. There are other large language models as well. But because it's so easy and accessible and it is available for free, I think that's why we've seen the proliferation that we have.
Tell me about Tiger-Tualatin School District, how it's being used in that district. You helped with those guidelines. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So those guidelines it was a very thoughtful process where students were brought in, administrators, teachers, parents, to really have a conversation about where we wanted to go with this technology. And I think what came out of that was very helpful was really clear guidelines. So they actually did kind of like a traffic light. Like red was like, AI cannot be used in this assignment. Yellow is it can be used if you get permission. And green is we want you to use AI in this assignment. And so I think as we're kind of figuring this out, this is new territory for everyone. Giving really clear guidance is the most helpful piece right now as we're exploring this technology and use cases.
Leah Moore, I want to bring you in right now. Leah is from the Kelso School District, school board, as a matter of fact. You are a parent of a freshman. You also, let's talk about the fact that for 6th to 12th graders, Kelso has an AI code of conduct right now. Tell me about that, first of all, because you guys just instituted this year, correct? How's it going so far?
So far I think it's going really well. Our students really took it in stride along with the agreements that they're already used to making about their use of technology. And just like Lindsay said, our teachers and students are kind of treading new ground, trying to figure out how to use this to the best way, but we wanted to make sure that everyone had clear guidelines.
What kind of issues are you running into right now, being brand new?
I don't know that we're running into issues. I think it's a lot about educating teachers and students about what's appropriate and how to best use the tools that are available to them.
I want to go back to Brian. Bill's in the back here. We got folks from all these districts here, which is so great. Brian from Lake Oswego School District. Let's, Brian, talk about that. Here's what you said. ChatGPT can be an effective teaching tool. Tell me about that.
Yes. So I think the big thing to realize is that ChatGPT has access to the entire body of knowledge on any given subject matter. It also has access to the entire school of thought on educational pedagogy. Mm-hmm. When you take those two things and put them together in a singular space, you have an ability to teach any particular student, regardless of where they're coming from, regardless of their learning style, at any time, without frustration, etc. So for those reasons, I think it has potential to be a huge boon.
There's some folks here, which are probably not going to surprise you, don't think it's the best thing in the world right now. I want to bring in Patrick Igloria. Am I correct on that one, Patrick? And maybe, Sammy, you come over here and stick the microphone right here so I can talk to Patrick. You're a student, you're a junior, you attend Trinity Academy in Portland. You believe AI should not be used in schools, and tell us why.
Yeah, I believe that the primary function of anyone's education isn't necessarily to prepare them to be a worker or to do any particular job, although of course it's very important and it is involved, but I think primarily education should serve to form a person's ability to think, to logic through problems, to communicate, to express their ideas. And I think assignments like writing papers, writing essays. At my school this year, I took a class working with MATLAB. It's a computer programming language. ChatGPT could easily have written programs for me. It could have done a lot of work and cut down the time I spent writing papers. But my goal and the goal of my school in having me do those assignments was not to produce great things, not to produce great computer programs, not to produce great pieces of writing, but to allow me to approach the problem, to break it down into smaller parts, to analyze it, to be able to form my own thoughts, solve my own problems, and then communicate them clearly, and to form those skills, because that will serve me and all my fellow students anywhere we go, whether we go on to college, you go on to trade school, and in any area of your life, whether that's part of a career or not.
There's probably folks at home saying, you got to be kidding me, there's a high school kid who doesn't want to use AI, a simpler way down that path, but it's good to hear that right now. In fact, I want to go, because you are a teacher at the same school.
Yes.
At Trinity. Let's talk about this, because you say using AI can be detrimental to critical thinking skills, somewhat what Patrick was saying back here. Are you getting any pushback from students in your school? Say, hey, we should be able to use it. My friend over at this particular school uses it.
I think we've gotten a little pushback, but not mostly around that. It's mostly around being really clear with students about what we expect and what's allowed. And I think this is especially difficult because the technology is changing so fast. So just a really simple example would be Grammarly did not used to be an AI-based tool, and it didn't used to be able to fix your writing for you to the level that that it can now. So we didn't have anything about, you can't use Grammarly on your writing until we realized this, So being very clear with students about what they are and are not allowed to do, which is relatively simple because they aren't allowed to use AI on any of their work, full stop. But they might not even know that they're using an AI-based tool. But I would say, as far as pushback on we should be allowed to do this, I don't think so, because I think we've been very clear throughout their time at the school that they aren't supposed to be using outside sources on their work. So AI is an outside source, so it would be similar, not the same, but similar to like consulting the Spark Notes on a text that they're supposed to be reading, which they're also not allowed to do, and is an academic integrity issue for us.
And we do have some students here who think it's not such a bad thing right now. I want to bring in Julianne Wong, student at Valley Catholic High School. You are involved in the ENCODE National High School AI Action Council. Is that right?
Yes.
I was fortunate to be on the school newspaper. I felt good about that. Congratulations to you. This is a pro AI program. I know that. You need to close the equity gap, is what you say. Tell us about that.
So I think AI is, first of all, we need to define it as not just ChatGPT. A lot of policies, I think, just think about students plagiarizing with this technology and using it, cognitively offloading on it, and writing their essays with it. However, I don't think that's the case. A lot of students that I know uses ChatGPT, text-to-speech tools, and other tools at home as tutors, debate sparring partners, and others, and that helps them to understand their assignments deeper and to bring a more well-rounded aspect of their assignment back to school to present to their teachers.
You worry about kids cheating at all?
I do worry about kids cheating, but I believe that with AI literacy and educators giving guidance to students on how to properly use technology, we can minimize that risk.
Kids would never cheat anyway. Why would we even think that? Hey, we're going to take a quick break. We got more folks here that want to talk about this, got lots to say about artificial intelligence. We come back on our special town hall tonight. Welcome back to our Town Hall special, AI in Schools, Risk and Reward. I want to bring in another teacher, this one from the Portland School District now. This is Isaiah Creel, 9th grade teacher, father of 3 children, as a matter of fact. Overall, you're opposed to AI in the schools. Do you teach it at all in your class?
Oh, not at all. Not even once, not even for a minute.
Tell me why.
Well, I'm employed at the Portland Public School District, and by the way, my opinion is my own. It doesn't reflect Portland Public, nor does it reflect my employer. But I'm employed to teach one of the most difficult languages on the planet. It's the language of commerce pretty much worldwide, and that's English. And part of English is not just learning about how to write essays, but it's how to communicate. That's what language is at the end of the day, and the beginning of the day for that matter. So if I am encouraging students to sidestep or circumvent any aspect of that communication that could happen between a human being, then I'm doing them a disservice. I'm doing their parents a disservice, and I'm not doing the job that I was hired for.
It says here the students do the rough draft by hand, the final draft on paper. How do they do this? How do you work that out?
Oh yeah, rough draft by hand, of course. And of course, they get a little cramp every now and again. I tell them to do this thing before we get into it. But then they'll type it up, right? Because I'm not a Luddite. We use computers every day. I use computers every day. I'm sure all of you use computers every day. So keeping them away from technology totally would be a disservice to them as well. So my goal is to teach them to be better writers and get practice at writing things. So I can really only tell whether or not they're doing their genuine best right there if they're doing it by hand, right?
Do you get any pushback from your students?
About using AI.
They want to use AI,
Of course they want to use AI. I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, I can remember many times.
This guy back here doesn't want to.
Hey, hey, there we go. I like the cut of your jib, son.
That's right.
But no, I mean, I don't really get any pushback. One of the ways that I can tell, and I think about the most recent time that this had happened, somebody brings me an essay that they've written, and they're like, hey, what do you think of this here, Mr. Creel? And I'm saying, hey, this is good, but what does obsequious mean? And if old boy can't tell me what obsequious means, but he used it in the paper, my guy, do it again.
Wow. I want to bring, speaking of this, all right, hold that thought. Hannah Highlander in the back, one of the great names I've heard in a long time. University of Portland, Associate Dean of Students, as a matter of fact. Cheating is one of the risks. We talked about that over here. He just mentioned it here. You investigate to determine if a student has used AI, correct? How do you go through, tell me how you go through that process.
Well, it's actually not quite that easy because there are many AI detection tools out there, but the best tool that exists currently is still wrong 1 in 20 times. And so if you're comfortable falsely accusing someone of something they didn't do 1 in 20 times, then you can rely on those. If you're not using an AI detection tool, then it's really about a conversation with the student on, tell me about your process. And really speaking more to, you know, some of what you were saying, like what is the intent? What are the learning outcomes? One of the things that I've implemented in my classroom, I'm also a math professor at UP, and this book I read, Teaching with AI, I highly recommend for all educators, but they recommended co-creating syllabus policies, so AI use policies for the class, but starting with the core values that students have. So I asked my students, what are the values that you would like to see implemented in our class this semester? And then I feed that into an AI tool and say, can you generate a draft of an AI use policy for our course based on what my students value? If you start with the values, we as humans naturally are going to desire more to participate in an educational setting if it's speaking to our values. I then can feed an AI tool my lesson plans and say, can you help me shift some of the ways that I'm teaching this particular concept to speak to these core values that my students have brought up? And the engagement, the community building that has happened as a result of this has been really phenomenal.
If a student turns in a paper, is there any way to absolutely prove it's AI generated?
No,
You can't do that now.
no.
The kids at home are going, really? Oh, that's fantastic. You talked about the fact that data is gold. Tell me about that.
What are you referencing?
When you talk about privacy and things like that,
Yeah.
pumping the data in is gold, correct?
I'm actually not sure what you're asking.
Well, we'll come back to that one because
Okay.
that's an important topic. But Emily Cadiz, I want to bring you up in front here because this is big. You founded a company called Finnegan the Dragon. You support language development. We need to introduce AI as a tool and not a service. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we actually study the impact of basic screen use, passive screen use on language development and how to mitigate that in the early childhood years, birth to 6. We primarily work with Head Start and the National Institute of Health. And I think my focus and most of my colleagues' focus is to look at the health aspect of AI. Screens make a huge impact on health markers and developmental milestones. And these are factual things. These are not made up. They're not based in fear. Having conversation around how to use screens as a tool versus a service. We haven't even gotten to AI yet. We're just talking about, passive screen time, streaming services, touch-based tablets, where information is incredibly important for parents to have, for teachers to have, but we don't disregard technology. We know that technology, at the rate that it's being consumed in the home, it's not going to just be replaced with a shake of the finger and a no, no, no. You have to actually teach to it as a tool, provide them a resource to be able to apply in real time and connect it to that offline learning, that piece that AI can really, assist with, making learning more personalized, making it more efficient. Not necessarily teaching the child. I mean, AI is not going to come in and certainly do what Head Start does. They're doing the hard lift right now of wiping the noses and feeding the mouths and taking care of those that can't speak for themselves. And AI can alleviate a lot of the burden that some of those teachers are feeling when it comes to data. And helping families engage and continuing to prepare those children for kindergarten.
We're going to continue this discussion. Our next guest is going to talk about the fact that she feels these students need to be fluent in AI because it is here. We'll talk about that after this. Stay with us, folks. We're continuing our town hall tonight, AI in schools, risk and reward. We have a great panel tonight. We've got some parents, we got some students, we got some experts talking about AI in the classroom, risks and rewards, good and bad. We're also going to hear from you as well coming up, so stay with us here. Welcome back to our town hall, everybody. Whenever you bring up the topic of artificial intelligence, whether it's in schools or just throughout the world, people say, these kids have got to be prepared because it's the way of the future. If they're not ready, we're in trouble. Well, we have one person over here. We're going to bring in Brenda Sargent, Tech Integration Specialist at Kelso School District. You want students to be AI fluent because it is here. Tell us about that.
It is. If we don't teach our children how to use AI and what it's about, they're going to go out into the world and, you know, whether it's college or in the workforce or just for their own personal use, and not have any instruction or modeling on how to use it ethically and appropriately. In Washington State, they put out a model that was HAIH, which human on both sides of it. So as you do your prompt generation, you're controlling it. AI does its work, and then at the end you look at it and say, was that accurate? Was it appropriate? Is it, you know, was there bias there? And so we are teaching our children about that.
What does your teaching staff use AI for right now?
for themselves personally. It's funny, we just surveyed them, and so they're using it primarily for communications, helping to draft communications. I mean, they're using it for all kinds of things, but that was a big one. Our high school teachers, when I surveyed them, the graph was really high on letters of recommendation, because that's what they're doing this time of year, writing for students, college, scholarships, applications. They're using it for lesson plans, for going through the Common Core standards and what's the best way to teach this? How can I generate learning targets? Help us write the IEP goals for our special education students. They're using it for a lot of the help with the heavy lifting of some of the day-to-day work. Teachers are slammed for time. That's one thing we hear from them over and over again. There's just not enough time in the day, and this is helping them.
And that's what I do hear from some of the teachers. They've got a big load as it is now, and now they've got to throw AI on the top of that. Speaking of teachers, I want to talk to Ken McCoy over here, 5th grade teacher, Hillsborough School District. You're kind of on the fence when it comes to AI, aren't you?
Yeah, I think that there are a ton of benefits and a ton of really unknown, unintended consequences waiting for us at every turn if we're not really careful.
Do you think at this point teachers obviously need more training in this area?
Yeah, I think teachers typically are playing in a sandbox that doesn't have any rules, doesn't have any rules. There's a real rush sometimes to implement, and doing that carefully, going slow to go fast, I think is really best for not only the educator, but for the kids that we serve. When we can figure out a way that we can expedite our work, make some of it easier, then we can be the human on the other side of that and really be thoughtful about what we're getting from AI. And we want to serve kids. So if it allows us to clear the way between our heart and theirs, then we've done something.
How long you been teaching,
beneficial.
Ken? How long you been teaching?
25 years.
25 years. Does that make you nervous when you think about AI and the training you're going to have to do to get these kids up to speed?
You know, the kids are already in some ways one step ahead of us in technology,
yes.
right? And our job is to give them our experience of how to be a good person, how to serve others, how to be creative, grow themselves, things that have already been talked about. And if AI is a tool that will help us do that, great. But once AI becomes the tipping point of, I no longer have to be creative, it's going to do that for me. I don't have to be an integral person who's going to be academically honest. AI will just handle that for me. We're going to come out the other side of this, not for the better.
I know we got a lot of parents watching this tonight, and another one in the studio, as a matter of fact. Ian Wright is a parent of 8th and 11th graders in the Camas School District. You work for Microsoft, so you know all about AI, and you believe that it should be in the schools, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I do have that perspective as a parent, and then also I see from the workplace side of things, noting that on the workplace, I don't actually work with any of the AI parts at Microsoft, but it is something that we are heavily involved in as a company and then as society and pushing culturally. So I agree with some of the perspectives saying, you know, it's here, our students are going to be faced with it. But I also do see, you know, parents coming across from the other side saying, like, you know, absolutely no. We saw in some of the polls, right, a significant percent of the population disagrees as well. So I also am thinking, like, okay, how do we address this in a way that benefits our students but still acknowledges concerns that, you know, parents have from both sides? For my children, yeah, I want them to be prepared for the world that they're going into. And I think for me, a lot of the discussion then comes to, okay, well, at what age is it appropriate? You know, what levels do we teach different parts of it? Thinking that there's, like other tools that we involve in, there's different ages that we introduce different tools. And so I think for me, a big part of the discussion is figuring out not if it should be, but at what levels are the right parts appropriate.
What age is it appropriate? I'm just going to throw that out to you folks out here. Give me a show. Somebody raise their hand. Tim, what age do you think is? We go back here to Mr. Lake Oswego back here. What are you thinking, sir?
I think as long as it is proctored or monitored, there is, if a child can speak, they can get benefit from interacting with a large language model.
Would you agree with that? You're shaking your head up and down. You agree with them on that?
Yes, I think I agree with that. With any child, if they are able to do the work without AI, then I think they can have AI to support. I think if we think about the calculator analogy, when the calculator first came into place, a lot of educators were concerned that kids were going to stop learning math. Still, we see that kids are learning math. We're teaching them basic subtraction, addition, and like I'm in calculus and I also can do integrals and other things without a calculator. So it's more of a support tool than it is a tool that kids cognitively offload onto.
I do. I remember back in the day when people said spell check. Oh my gosh, that's just going to kill us. Now, really, a lot of people do use spell check. Let's move right up here and see what you're thinking. Yes.
Bringing up the notion of spell check
Yeah.
is actually more apropos to the calculator analogy than it is to the ChatGPT analogy. You mentioned that as soon as they can speak, they can use it. Well, that's true. And how many parents have we seen? Okay, proctored and monitored. How many parents out there have handed their child a tablet, an iPad? We don't need training as kids. They are made to be both easy to use and addictive. They truly are. And so we're talking about having our first interactions, our first substantive interactions with another entity. From the moment we can speak, be the entire library of the world's knowledge at their fingertips. There is not enough proctoring and monitoring for a small child to do that. So if we are talking about allowing this as a learning tool, as you say, there definitely has to be an age limit. But that also has to go in hand with what you were saying about ethics and morality. But the problem with that also, though, is whose ethics, what morality, and who is going to say that we have a common morality around the use of this thing?
You want to say something before we go to break?
So I fully understand your point intellectually. I think there are two things to take into account. 4 words changes that whole paradigm. I am a 7-year-old, 5 words. I'm a 7-year-old. I am a 7-year-old. If you give that to a model, you're not getting the fire hose of knowledge to you. You're getting very context-appropriate analogies, explanations, and context. And I think it's also very interesting to your prior point about being an English teacher and your sacred role. I'm a reformed attorney, and so I take the English language very, very seriously. And I think one of the things that is overlooked is interacting with generative AI requires a level of specificity of language that we don't otherwise use in common speak. I'm a grammarian at heart. My kids bought me a t-shirt that says, I'm silently correcting your grammar. But that's a lost art, right? It's not prized as much, not even in the business context, not even the professional context. But if you use generative AI and you're taught to use it, and all of this goes back to being taught, if you're taught to use it appropriately, there is a learning curve that is not able to be duplicated. It is not a static, predetermined age growth curve. It is an intellectual growth curve.
Hold that thought, Brian, all right? Because we're going to take a quick break. You were on a roll there. We'll come back to you. And a lot of you folks here, more to talk about. Our town hall continues after this. Talk about AI in the schools, risk and reward. It's our town hall tonight. And the question is guidelines. Should the state mandate guidelines when it comes to AI? Let me just throw that out. How many say we should mandate guidelines? Show of hands. You? Anybody say we should not mandate guidelines? Anybody say we should not mandate the guidelines? Let's go back over here. Ian, why should we not?
Well, I think during the break we heard also that I don't know that we have enough information, and I think I agree with that. That it's still a little too new to know, like, well, what should those standards be? I think there needs to be some more learning on that. And also, I also look at it from the perspective, I have a similar experience from my childhood about, like, say, calculus in schools and being introduced to calculators and things like that. We didn't necessarily mandate you must use a calculator in advanced math courses to do that, and yet it was a necessary part of the education. So I see that in the same way, like, say, the generative AI tools, that it may be a tool that we use, but I think that mandating it is premature at this point.
So we obviously need guidelines, right? Everybody agree with that? Let's bring the microphone to Emily if we can. What do you think, Emily?
I think guidelines are incredibly necessary for all types of technology interaction. We're just now really understanding the impact of passive screen time on the development of children birth to 6. Lena.org does a great job with that. That's the Language Environmental Analysis Organization. And they look at the delays that are being caused by passive screen use. What we used to think was benign, what we used to think is just putting a tablet in front of a child and letting them press a few buttons, that actually impacts their overall brain development. We don't have enough information on AI right now, and I don't know if the answers lie just in educators or education policymakers. I think it lies in a more it lies in a broader number of voices, especially in the medical community, coming together and working collaboratively. I think that we have a history of rolling out technology into classrooms with very little understanding of how that's going to impact children. And what we find is that later we have to admit, yeah, we rolled that out and we were just putting the plane together in flight. And that's not really, that's negligence.
Students, I want to hear from students back here. What do you think? What kind of guidelines do we need? What do you think?
I don't think that the state as a whole should have guidelines, but I think individual schools should definitely be creating guidelines that are individualized within their students. I think AI is just such a diverse tool, and it affects different socioeconomic backgrounds in different ways. So it's really important that we look at the effects that it has on each population, as well as the resources that they have to use AI in their classrooms before we create policies and guidelines that are mindful of those things and implement it into their classrooms.
Patrick, what do you think?
I actually agree with a lot of what people have been saying. I think there shouldn't be any sort of broad, sweeping guidelines at any time soon, because there's so much that needs to be understood about it. But I think that's also the reason why I was so skeptical of the idea of it being introduced, is that we don't understand it. And I think I agree that it should not be rolled out and allowed into classrooms if we're not going to be able to understand it enough to create those concrete guidelines.
Is anybody worried about what we're seeing with AI right now, particularly in the classrooms? It seems to have come on so fast. This big explosion now, and it really, for a lot of folks, say, where do we go next, right? What's happening? Yes, sir, what do you think?
It really has this feeling of the wild, wild west sometimes, and you worry about not only bias coming into the equation, financial gain coming into the equation. There's just a lot of pieces here that if we don't get a handle on it, we will be living in a dystopian novel not too long from now. Like, we'll be able to look back at this and said, to tell ourselves, you know, we could have gotten so much more done better if we had just had our eyes and ears open and not just let AI come and sweep over us. We're not powerless. We've got to have a way to insert into the equation. We talked during the break about morality and ethics and how that factors in, and the question was brought, whose ethics and morality? And if we don't have an answer to that, we're going to be the least common denominator. It's going to be the people with the most power win, and that's not good for kids. It's not good for a lot of people.
Patrick, the teacher, I want to bring you around in front here. I see I've separate those two. We have Patrick the student, Patrick the teacher.
Well,
We've got about a minute and a half left, so go ahead.
I just wanted to agree with a few of the things I heard over here, which, I mean, I guess the basic way I would say it is that there's a lot of negligence involved in rolling out a tool as fast as ChatGPT, for example, and then Gemini and all of these Claude, all these were rolled out that are easily accessible for free to anyone without age barriers in such a way that, you know, like you said, the Wild Wild West. You know, schools are just constantly on the back foot because the technology keeps changing, and students. I feel so much for students who are, you know, they suddenly have this new tool, easy access to it. They don't know what to do about it, you know, and it's right there. And maybe they're struggling in school, right? And the technology is changing faster than their parents or any of the adults in their lives who love them and care about them and want them to flourish can keep up with it without sort of devoting their life to studying these things. And so for me as an educator and an administrator in the school where I teach, we take a perspective of saying, let's be a little bit more careful here. Let's not roll this out right away. Let's not bring this in. And I would say we will never be having students like use AI tools to write. I can't imagine that happen. But we're saying let's just at least pause here and see how these technologies work.
Speaking of pause, we have to take one here. Take another break after this. We'll be back. Welcome back to our town hall. If you could just hear the great discussions we have in the commercial breaks. Very impressive. Here's the question I have for all of you. What's the future look like of AI? What does it look like, particularly in the classrooms? Let's begin with you, Hannah.
So I think a lot of that depends on what we're talking about tonight. If we are training our educators and teaching our students about ethical, effective use of AI, then I think the future of education with AI as a partner looks like educators being able to go back to the human component of teaching, to be able to connect with students, to be able to teach students what are things that are inherently human that AI tools are not able to do, to learn empathy, to learn critical thinking, to learn creativity. I think if we don't teach students that, they're still going to be using it, but they're not going to have that framework, that guidance that we could have provided.
Julianne, what do you think? What's the future look like for AI in the classroom?
I think the future of AI is what we make of it. If we as a people decide to use it ethically, to use it alongside us as a tool and not to use it as something that does something for us, I think the future of AI with students is very, very bright. It has the potential to be a tutor, to help so many students understand so many different topics a lot better, and it has the potential to be such an amazing tool to just aid our teachers when they're teaching us in the classroom.
I'll bet you do really well in school. Don't you just have that feeling? I want to see what you folks at home are thinking. Can we bring up that tag board and take a look at this right now? How should AI be used in schools? Look at this. 53% say teach proper usage. 31% say it should be banned. 9% for teachers only. 7% say students can use it. Anybody see anything other that surprises them at all when they look at those numbers? You see anything? Let's go back over here real quick. We're almost out of time, but tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think that the numbers of people who say that it should be banned are missing what should have been an integral part of the discussion tonight, which is the equity piece. AI has the ability to close the learning gap. If you imagine a student who's given an assignment for a push about something, and they're in the drive to soccer practice, their dad's a history professor, and his heart sings inside, and he starts to explain and talk about how to frame the essay and a thesis. If that student has the exact same conversation with AI, it's deemed unethical or unethical and out of bounds.
I'm out of town. I hate to tell you this. We're out of town. In fact, you know how I find out? Will you hold on to this real quick for a second? I'm gonna ask Siri, all right? Siri, is the show over? Are we out of time? Siri? It doesn't always work. Let me just put it that's AI for you. Let me tell you that much. Hey, thanks a lot for oh, now she talks. She says, good evening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll stay on top of this, I promise you, here at K2. See you soon. Good night, everybody.